Nature Society headquarters and to our talk on the Cross Island Line. This is a public talk, so we will have members of Nature Society and we'll also have members from other nature groups and interested members of the public with us. So we welcome you and we hope we don't say anything bad. Tonight's talk is about the Cross Island Line engagement, which includes some discussion on the environmental impact study, which is now public. And I think I just want to give you an overview of what's been going on since March 2013. You know, it's nearly 3 years in the making, the engagement with the Garmin regarding the Cross Island Line. But first I have some good news. The EIA report is now available online. And this is particularly interesting because when we were having the engagement, we anticipated a lot of public interest and we suggested to the agency that they put it online. And they were reluctant to, and the reason why is because other environmental impact studies in Singapore are not put online and they were concerned that it would create a precedent. Well, we've got a precedent. And you can Google for it. I put the URL there if you can remember it. Can anybody memorize that? No. Okay. Sorry. And that concludes my presentation. History at a glance of the Cross Island Line engagement. Back in about 2013, early 2013, when the LTA Master Transport Plan that was published by LTA came out, that's when the public found out, hey, there's going to be a MRT line running from Changi through to Jurong and crossing over the nature reserve. So they anticipated that this was going to be a sensitive subject. The Land Transport Authority and the nature groups had a clash earlier on the Bukit Brown project, the road diversion of Wally Road. And the public engagement, or the engagement between the agency and the nature groups and other groups, including the Heritage Society, didn't go well. I think most of you will know that. I don't need to go into details, but it didn't go well from both sides. And we all wanted to, independently, we, the Nature Society, and of course the Transport Ministry and the agency, LTA, wanted something better for this one. So, in fact, the Transport Ministry approached Nature Society early on to have some quiet discussions with 4 or 5 people. We met for coffee with some of the senior management of the Transport Ministry, and we spoke about how we could do things better this time in terms of public engagement. And it was decided that we would have a working group engagement. That means form a committee that would be made up of members from the agency and other agencies that are interested, for example, national parks, and of course from nature groups. And the nature groups and individuals were identified to be included in the discussion. And besides Nature Society, there's also Cicada Tree Eco Place had representation of 2 people, and some other individuals who are well known in the nature business. That would be Subaraj Rajathuri and Joseph Koh, who's our Singapore Spider-Man and former senior diplomat. Professor Lai from the university was also included in that group, as well as Faisal Jamal, who was a MP, nominated MP at that time, although her term has finished. She was also on that panel. So we met up. We met up with the agency many times and had discussions. We also, as the Nature Society, published a position paper, which many of you probably have read, back in July 2013. And we proceeded to have further discussions. The working group produced a technical document that covered, really documented the biota of the nature reserve as best we could determine it from our existing records. And then the agency committed to doing an EIA, environmental impact study, and the working group contributed to define the scope of that EIA. The job was led to consultants ERM, a fairly well-known international company that performs environmental impact studies. And when they produced their draft report, it came back to the committee, and the committee reviewed that report and made feedback and comments. And those feedback and comments, I'm very happy to say, were included in the draft, in the document that you can see today. So the engagement went very smoothly. We set out to make sure that our engagement with the agency was always civil, fact-based, and non-emotional. So this is at the outset what we set out to do, and we achieved it. And I think that the result was good. As an example of public engagement, I think it's a model to work from. And when we look back to previous engagements, even going back past Booker Brown, back to the golf course issue, Lower Pierce golf course. There are issues that have happened over the years that the engagement has not gone well at all. So this is a good model to work from. So we'll keep going. As a result of the efforts of the working group, there were a number of fairly substantial documents produced. I've already mentioned the NSS position paper, but the Cross Island Line Working Group also produced a substantial document which was not made public. It was for the consumption of the people on the committee. And this was created so that we could make sure that no species could be missed out in the environmental impact study. The problem is that when you have outsiders coming in to do environmental impact assessments, they have limited time. They don't have 20 to 30 years of experience of roaming the forest and knowing what's there. Quite often they don't come from an area where they have this dipterocarp forest, this primary dipterocarp forest, or the unique regrowth forest that we have here. So we were very aware that they would be coming in without a lot of that knowledge. So we wanted to make sure that knowledge was put down in a document, and that's the purpose of the working group report. The environmental impact consultant went ahead and did the work according to the scope in the tender, and we were given the opportunity to review it. Of course, we did the review, and of course we'll have feedback and suggestions on how it could be improved, and we did this, and I'll go into a bit more detail later. And that feedback was taken, and of course the final report, which you can now download. Subraj, you can now download the EIA report. Yeah. Subraj is one of our Cross Island Line Working Group members. Everybody knows Subraj. And Vilma, and who else is here? Christine and Vilma. Others. So, I don't know if Joseph Coe's here tonight. I haven't seen him yet. One of the important points that we have to make about our nature reserves is that they are fragmented. You have these little patches. Now, I think I've got a pointer here. Which button do I press, Kerry? Okay, this one. Let's get some instructions there. It says, do not look into light with remaining eye. That was my little joke. You didn't know I was funny, did you? Actually, quite funny. So these little patches of green here, dark green here, these are patches of primary forest that have been left over from the early 19th century Gambia planting that went over the whole island, and one of those patches, which is right in here, this one and this one and this one, they were fairly large patches of primary forest left over because of the McCritchie Reservoir being built before the Gambia planters had completely destroyed the place. So this particular McCritchie forest is very special because it has these resources, and the regrowth forest in between these primary forests is very mature and is actually very good habitat for fauna. An important point that we had to make over and over again during this engagement, and it's very important to make people know about this, is that secondary forest is not second-class habitat. The trees that grow in the secondary forest fruit multiple times a year. The trees that grow in the primary forest can fruit once every 7 to 10 years. So the secondary forest gives a lot more opportunities for foraging for food for a lot of our critically endangered animals. And we should not just say, oh, it's just secondary forest, we don't care about it. Secondary forest is very, very important to us, particularly the secondary forest in our nature reserve, because it's been there for between 100 and 150 years. It's grown up and created some good habitat. But all the same, the place's habitat is, the habitats are fragmented because we have these reservoirs here, and we have some military facilities around the place, some fences and some roads and things throughout, and the place actually is, an animal cannot go from one end of the reserve to the other unless it's got wings and can fly. So whenever there's an activity in the nature reserve, it's not that we're considering the whole nature reserve for the particular activity, it's actually the fragment that you're actually working in that you affect. And because the animals don't have that much ability to get away from it, then you have magnified impacts, even for just people walking in the forest. So this is why we're very concerned. This is the original alignment going through our original concerns for the original alignment published in the 2013 master plan, Transport Master Plan, showed this straight line running straight through some of the best forest in Singapore, but not only the best forest, but also the most pristine, clear streams that you can find in Singapore are right here. And they contain an incredible diversity of freshwater fish and other animals that depend on the water, like crabs and insects. So this is our concern was that, oops, sorry, press the wrong button. That's better. So I'm just pressing buttons randomly here. Our concern was that in order to put boreholes, to build an underground railway line, you need to put boreholes down. You need to find out what the geology is like downstairs, and you need to know what you really want to know is that there's granite down there, good, reliable granite that you can tunnel in, and it's structurally very sound. We anticipated they'd be putting boreholes down every 15 to 20 metres, according to a report in the newspaper in March 2013, where the LTA stated we'll put boreholes down every 15 metres. And when we calculate every 15 metres, well, basically you have to build a 2-lane highway across the nature reserve, meaning clearing, dragging these big machines in to do the boreholes, and what we'll end up with is siltation into the stream, so that we're the end of the stream. So we jumped up and down on that one. That was one of the main points of our objection, and to support our objection, we had a gift from the heavens, and the gift was some heavy rain showers that fell on a project, and I think this might be Joseph Ly's photo here. The rain fell on this project at Venus Drive. They had not bothered to put any soil control measures in. They just went and agar started digging. The rain came down and washed all of the soil into the Venus Drive streams. And so while it was an environmental disaster for the fish and that live in the streams, and the birds that feed on the fish, and the insects that live in the stream, it was a godsend to us, because we had the ability to demonstrate that earthworks in Singapore are just not done correctly. They're not done with care, and they don't even follow the rules set up by PUB. So we were able to use this as a example to support our concern for what was going to happen here. There's some more examples of, you can see the mud running down into the stream here. So this is the Venus Drive stream. Insects, fish, kingfishers who want to feed on the fish, all denied their habitat. We also had another example that we were able to draw on from a few years ago, when a pipe jacking contractor had decided that instead of trucking the sludge out of the project site, he decided to throw a pipe over the fence and drop the sludge into the stream, into the Rifle Range stream. So the Rifle Range stream became the colour of Taytarik, and of course the frog here became Taytarik also. And this was particularly, even though it was an environmental disaster, it played into our hands because, sorry, wrong button. Frogs breathe not only through their nose, but also through their skin. You get a frog silted up, and you've got a frog that can't breathe properly. so towards the end of this NSS engagement, we had this concept of it started out as the green dot and the red dot, but I think it was Vilma de Rosario who suggested that it become, it was you, Vilma, wasn't it? Suggested this, the green heart in the pink dot. No, I'm not so smart. I was saying green dot in the red dot, which is a bit daggy, you know, but it became the green heart in the red dot. So that's our story. Okay, so the Cross Island Line Working Group made a report on the biodiversity of the Mukatchu forest, and this was not published publicly. It was internal, but the more people contributed. For example, some of the people we need to recognise, Marcus. What's that button there giving me a lot of trouble? Marcus and Kelvin. Subraj, of course, was on the group. Joseph Coe was Spider-Man on the group. Sim Kuhn, expert on butterflies and little farm insects, were not in the group, but we roped them in to help us with this. Myself for Flora, and Faisal Jamal and Joseph Coe, Vilma, also contributed on the executive summary. We particularly were helped by Joseph. He's a former diplomat, senior diplomat, and he helped us to craft a language. And it's very important to craft a language in a way that can be presentable to the senior public servants who are going to read this. You cannot agar write anything you like. You cannot write like our bang. So what we achieved with this document was we provided a common understanding for all of the stakeholders. What were we concerned about? We're concerned about the flora and fauna inside the reserve, and how much was it? We documented what was there. And of course it formed one of the addendums to the environmental impact study, if you have had time to go through them all. And we put a lot of critter photos in there too, you know. It wouldn't be a Nature Society presentation if we didn't have some critter photos. So this one here, this is one of, look how clear the stream is. This is one of the streams down in that Mukatchu area. Look how clear it is. This is a forest, I think it's forest walking catfish, Subraj. Yes, forest walking catfish, photographed by Vilma de Rosario. Vilma's over here. And monkeys drinking from the stream. This is a spiny-billed terrapin, but it's an incredible place. That's a fishing spider. Spiders that actually catch fish. Isn't that amazing? We have all this stuff in Singapore. We documented. There's an example of how much biodiversity we get. A lot of, you know, Singapore, 200 years of development, we still have this much stuff in our nature reserves. It's absolutely incredible. Just some statistics. 90% of our original forest cover is cleared. We have less than 10% remaining forest, primary forest, and we have about 30% species loss of native fauna, you know, across the board. And we have special habitats in the reserve, stream habitats, special one-off trees, for example, Stonia pneumatophora, which is one of my most favourite trees. We've counted probably 16 instances of that tree in Singapore, another 2 on Pulau Ubin, 2 or 3 on Pulau Ubin. It's how many sticks we have of that tree, and 1 sapling we know about. Living dead. So things don't look good. Yeah, I've sort of covered the frog and the crab. These come from the siltation of rifle range. So our main concern is for the impact assessment, risk of erosion and siltation of the streams, concern for surface activities that might clear forest and expose soil, which would then be washed into the streams. And we provided examples of recent siltation events, which I have been talking about. That slide is probably just redundant. This is just another discussion. One of the points we made for the scope of the environmental impact study was to set up some sort of scoping baseline study of certain taxa of insects, mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, in these streams. But it turned out not to be practical because we couldn't find the skills to do it. So there's one of the drawbacks. It's not anybody's fault. It's just we didn't have the skills to be able to do it within the auspices of the environmental impact study. That's just the map of the area. This is the just a quick look at the table of contents of the document that the working group prepared. Very extensive document. People put a lot of work onto this, and I seem to recall one Christmas we were all revising it. Is that right, Vilma? Over Christmas, we were busy doing, different people did parts of the document. I did the trees, and Marcus did the verts, and other people did other parts, and we were trying to pull this together into one document. Of course, Microsoft Word is a real disaster when you're trying to bring large documents together. So we had a lot of formatting problems. So we lost one whole Christmas to New Year just getting this thing into a single document. A lot of heartbreaking struggle went into this engagement. And of course, in our summary, we have these two pictures here that are from CTEP activities, Cicada Tree Eco Place. So this is our friend Andrew Tay with the children. I think they're looking at a Kalugo there, and these are all the children that are on one of those walks in CTEP. You know, we're going to deny, if we destroy the forest, we're going to deny these children and their children and their children's children and their children's children and their children's children's children a decent nature reserve, and their children also. And of course we had this thing called the parable of the apple. Vilma made me change it to the parable of the jamboo because it was more local. And the idea is that, and this is our issue. This is a very, very important issue. We have this nature reserve, roughly 20 square kilometres, and it's all we have left. But we've got developments around the edge. We've got Cross Island Line. We've got pipelines for, water infrastructure. We've got roads. We've got military stuff. We've got people. We've got illegal entry, illegal use. We've got weather issues. We've got poachers, and we've got aliens. I don't mean from outer space. I mean aliens from alien species, and they all accumulate impact. You can't look at a single project and say, oh, this project here is just going to do a bit of damage here and it'll be okay. No, it won't be okay because it all accumulates. There's a torture that the Chinese used to apply, and I think it was banned after about 1903. It was called, the English translation is death by 1,000 cuts. I think it's called Ling Chi or something. Ling Chi? Ling Chi. And so they tie somebody up and they just cut bits of them off over a long period of time until they eventually died. It was the most terrible way you could die. And so when you have projects in a nature reserve, maybe some housing development too close to Bukit Timah, maybe a Cross Island Line, maybe some people going into the nature reserves at night time for adventure and photography, maybe a storm. They all accumulate, just like you're taking a bite out of a jamboo. Take one bite, okay, I've got a bite, take another bite. You end up with nothing much left but an old core which you throw away. And we're very concerned that that's going to happen to our nature reserve if we don't take a zero impact approach to all potential invasion of different projects. And that's why the Nature Society and also the other groups that were with us on this engagement were very, very strong about this. I remember one night we were engaging with the LTA and I actually brought an apple with me. And so when I was giving the same talk to them, and I pulled the apple out and started taking a few bites out of it, and I had the apple was about 3/4 gone, and I offered it to one of the guys sitting near me. He didn't want to take it off me. It was something about my oral hygiene, I guess. We received of course we had the opportunity to review the EIA report. So the EIA consultant, ERM, was engaged and they went about their business. We didn't have a lot of interaction with them along the way through, but once they came to their final report, we had another opportunity to review their work. I think that slide's out of place. When we received the EIA report, it contains a cell array of magnitude of impact, magnitude criteria for effect on baselines, and they have this scale, 5 things, and had positive impact, which we ignore, negligible impact through to large impact, and they have these criteria there. Negligible impact is effect is within the normal range of natural variation. How do you measure natural variation? Small impact magnitude affects only a small area of habitat such that there is no loss of viability function. In actual fact, environmental impact studies can only come up with qualitative results. You can't say, okay, the answer is 50 or the answer is 42. Actually, the answer is 42, isn't it? Yeah, 42. But we don't know what the question is. So we have this problem of qualitative scales, and you have these fairly hand-wavy criteria for coming up with what is the criteria. We weren't really happy with that because you just have to change the words in there a bit, and you start getting different numbers. You start getting different results. So our advice was to do something like this, and we increased the criteria for determining what was small, what was large. But it's still subjective, you know. It's still subjective, and some of these, because this was done in a bit of a hurry, some of these are not really valid. Some of them probably belong somewhere else. But you know, the point we're making is that, you know, you need to increase it. So in the end, I think if you look at the EIA report now, you see that some of this was taken. Some of this, and I'm quite happy that it was. And I won't bore you with the rest of the details. You can go and read it. We found some aspects. We weren't really satisfied with some of the analysis. We did some trampling analysis because in this environmental impact study, we were talking about a different alignment. I should have brought the map up for that earlier. But excuse me a sec while I just hop down and see if I can find the map. Okay, I should have put this slide earlier. This line here represents the alignment that we're talking about today. The alignment that was talked about in 2013 went straight through here, and now what's happened is the alignment has been moved across so that it's roughly coincident with the sign trail, and that the boreholes that are going to be dug are going to be along the sign trail. Then there's going to be no clearing and this sort of thing. So I should have brought that up first, and I'll just go back to this thing. But besides the boreholes, is going to be seismic, because you know, from if you read the news, you'll know that the boreholes have gone down from 1 every 15 metres to just a handful of boreholes that are going to occur inside the nature reserve and be dug on the sign trail itself, meaning no clearing. So how do they get enough data to know the geology? They have to do seismic surveys, and the seismic surveys, of course, become our greater concern because seismic surveys get done off trail, and we were looking at the prospect of having a bunch of seismic surveys trampled all over the nature reserve where the alignment went for 150 metres either side, and we almost had a heart attack. Well, actually, Subraj did have a heart attack. I almost had it. So we found the analysis was a bit not quite there. So we came up with our own analysis by analysing how many people were walking through the forest. We were saying things like every 5 steps you'd step on something. Because when you walk in this sort of forest, you have palms and all sorts of things covering your vision. You actually can't see where your feet are going. So we were very concerned about that, and we were suggesting stuff to put in. I'll keep going. I've got to put that slide up. When we wrote the scope, when we assisted the LTA to develop the scope for the EIA, we were very particular about having something in there about cumulative impacts, and this I spoke about before. Death by 1,000 cuts. That had to be considered, and this map was provided to them showing all of the incidents that have occurred over the last few years that we could think of. Every star there represents something that's happened. A piece of infrastructure went in, like some water tanks went in here. We have alien invasion there from Mars, from rubber trees and other aliens that have come into the forest. Poaching, gangster trucks dumping rubbish on Old Upper Thompson Road. North Face 100 run at night time. We managed to have that tuned back. all sorts of things going on inside the nature reserve that were detrimental to its health, and these things had not been really considered very well in the original draft. So, but I'm pleased to say that they have brought this stuff into the final version. So I will have to say that we're happy to have been listened to, and we're happy that our suggestions have been taken on in the final report. It's a trampling assessment again. We don't want to do too much of the trampling assessment. Impact on fauna was also missing. This is one of our greatest problems with the draft, was that the impact on fauna due to people going off trail doing geophysical surveys was negligible. And the analysis said because the animals will move away into the surrounding forest. So we went and we looked to see, well, what sort of objective materials can we find to help build this up. We don't just want to criticise, we want to help to make it good. That's always been our objective. And we found that we had some good information on mouse deer, that some studies that had been done by a Japanese scholar researching mouse deer in the Darnum Valley in Borneo, and we had some information about their ecology, about roughly what their numbers were in logged forest, some of their behaviour. And one part of their behaviour that interested us was the males, very territorial, and they have these little tusks, and when the males have territory disputes, they damage each other with those tusks. You know, you can have eyes missing or cuts that become infected and things like that. So we summarised that information, we included it in our feedback. But I think you'll find that some mention that the full extent of our stuff didn't go in, but at least there's now mention of these territorial animals, including mouse deer, slow loris and pangolin. Of those three, two of them can damage each other in territorial disputes. The pangolins tend not to damage each other, even though they have this gado-gado mock fighting, they tend not to damage each other. But it's the damaging ones that we were concerned about, and because it's such a tight habitat, as soon as you displace an animal from its home range, its location, you immediately place that animal at peril of having territorial disputes with its neighbours. And this is what we had to put up. In the end, in one of the final meetings that we had, we agreed that the impact of the seismic works on the fauna was going to be large before and after mitigation. And in the end, there was a bit of to and fro between the agencies, and of course the overall impact, as you know from the news, was reported as being moderate, not large. But I'm not too concerned about that. I'll tell you why in a few moments. This is some of our input. We put a lot of work into the review of the EIA document. We did a lot of GIS analysis. We calculated what was going to be the sorry, I can't point with a pen, but I point with this high-tech laser thingy here. So there's the alignment, and this is probably the best map to show you what's going on. These lines here, they're 150 metres one side to the other, and they represent the extent of the seismic survey for refraction and electrical resistivity. And these are not 150 metres. These are like 24 metres apart, I believe. Yeah, 24 metres. But there was also going to be gravity surveys that went for 100 to 150 metres either side of the alignment. And so all of this activity in the forest, I think I've got another graphic here. What was Tom? I don't want that one just yet. I'm just going to come. Sorry, there's an animation here that's taking some time, and I've got to get this back to. Okay, here we go. I'm back here. So we calculated the noise effects from the EIA report itself, and we calculated that the area of effect for the animals was going to be roughly this yellow area here. and we calculated the number of animals that we anticipated to be there based on the Darnham Valley. I'm talking about mouse deer. The Darnham Valley study, some sort of estimate. I think we overestimated it, but that's the only data we had, and we're able to demonstrate that quite a significant impact was going to be had, visited upon the mouse deer, the mice deer, as we like to say. Mouse deers, mice deer. Which one? The correct is deers, but the actual mice deer is easy to say, more natural. I have here an animation. I don't know whether it's going to play very well. Here we go. So the plan was that as and I'll play it again in a second. They were going to put a borehole here and a borehole there, and they're going to do these seismic surveys in more or less a sequential fashion. But what we found was that by doing that, the whole of the extent of the alignment was going to be at some point always going to have some activity going on in it, which meant that we were going to have the critters moving about. Our suggestion that was taken on was that instead of just agar-agar doing this borehole survey separately to the seismic, that the seismic activities be done when the borehole's going on. And because the borehole activity goes on for a long period, we suggested that one of the mitigations was that the seismic activity could go on every other day to give the animals a break, to only go in the afternoon, to leave gaps where you didn't go in. And always to align your seismic activity with the borehole activity. And that way you didn't have the whole alignment completely blocked off by some sort of activity. You had it all concentrated in one place, and you didn't have day after day, every day, all day, people walking around in the forest. And I'm also very pleased to say that this suggestion has been taken on by the consultant and the LTA. So this is how we got the mitigation, the effects down a little bit. So now we have the outcome. We've got the official outcome, which is the impact is minimised by mitigation, and that the impact is moderate. Okay, that's what you'll hear in the news. And how can we tell from that whether we should do soil investigation or not? Just because, okay, impact is minimised and impact is moderate. Is that enough? Can anybody tell me how to make a decision based on that information? It still boils down to a legal decision. NSS position is this EIA that's been published is the best that we can get it. We can't do any better. We've all worked hard to make sure that it's a fair description of the results. But if you consider our issue about death by 1,000 cuts, how do you quantify death by 1,000 cuts? What percentage of this project contributes to the death by 1,000 cuts? It's all very hand-wavy stuff. There's no science that can let us measure these things exactly. All the same, the position of Nature Society, as well as our friends in CTEP and the individuals that were involved in the project, we still maintain our zero impact policy. We say that even though this EIA has proceeded and it has defined some things that we can do to reduce the impact, there is still impact. It doesn't matter whether it's moderate or large or even small. It's not negligible. If the impact is not negligible, it is therefore significant. And this is the important point. So in summary, I would say there is significant impact that we need to be concerned about if the soil investigation goes ahead, and that if it goes ahead, then we will be contributing to Ling Chai. Ling Chai, is that right?
Ling Chai?
My Ling Chai is death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Ancient Chinese torture. So, where do we go from here? What can you do to help? And one is to come here and listen to me babble away for half an hour. The other thing you can do is go and visit the LTA. Well, you don't have to visit the LTA anymore because you can download the report. Please download it. You're going to need a whole weekend to read it. It's 1,000 pages, but you don't have to read every part of it. You can read volume 1 and volume 2.
So it's death by 1,000 pages.
Death by 1,000 pages. Death by 1,000 pages. We've brought Ling Chi back to life. And you can provide feedback back to LTA, what you think. I mean, think what you think and tell them what you think about the, and that goes through the feedback channel. In Singapore, you can talk to your MP. The MPs want to hear from you about this sort of thing. Please talk to your MP. There's a petition going around that the Love McCritchie people are circulating. You can Google for it. And you can sign the petition. You can write to the newspaper. Many people have written to the newspaper. The newspaper has been dripping with letters from people who are concerned about this. The newspapers have been very supportive. Or you can blog about it on your Facebook page and things like that. So these are the things how you can help. So now I have finished babbling, and now I'm happy to address questions from the audience. Yes, sir, Mr. Alf.
Have they said anything